The hard truth of it all is I'd way rather use regular guitars. But, you know, regular guitars is how I got here. Hello, I'm the Bun. Welcome to the channel. This here is Baritone Obsessed. This is a show all about guitars that are a whole bunch longer for going a whole bunch lower. So you might think that the Bun is really excited about having to use baritones. Like, Bun, he loves baritones. The way that I see it is baritones are guitars with limited availability, limited specs, limited model choices, limited finish options, and yeah, it's just, they're super limited. The hard truth of it all is I'd way rather use regular guitars. But, you know, regular guitars is how I got here. Huge thanks to everybody with us over at Patreon and YouTube memberships. They are the people who produced this episode and many others. If you'd like to get involved in producing future episodes and future music, you can do so in the links down in the description. I was pretty stubborn about getting into the baritone thing. You know, I really wanted the regular guitars to just work. I was like, oh, maybe if I just get the right setup, you know? And then 9 years later, a bunch of people told me about the baritone thing, guitar teachers, guitar techs. I had a baritone in 99, 2000, somewhere around there. Didn't understand how much you had to work with the tone of it and all this sort of stuff. Took a long time to figure out, oh, I do need a baritone, this is how I need to use it, and this is all the stuff about it. But I didn't want to. I really didn't want to. I started getting really into recording. You know, I was recording my own bands, I went to recording school, I started a recording studio, and I was recording a lot. My ears could just really clearly hear it. It's right around the time that the PRS Mashak came out. I had already taken a look at the Ibanez Mashak, but the one that I was looking at, it sold, and then the PRS Mashak came out. I'm like, oh, perfect, I'll get one of those. The thing around that though is I didn't want the guitar. I didn't want the baritones because there were no baritones that I wanted, if that makes sense. I was reluctant about the baritone thing, but when I finally fully got into it, it solved my problems so completely that I was like, this is it. And I realized that I needed to go longer. So it went from the Mashak to the RGIB to longer baritones still. But we're not really gonna go there today. Instead, we're going to talk about those of you who don't really need a baritone and why. Reason number one that you don't need a baritone would be the binary riffs. 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1. If you're tuned down to Z and you don't use much of the fretboard, most of any guitar will work. Get a Les Paul and get at it. So here we've got a 1972 Gibson Les Paul kind of thing going on, 24.75 inches in scale. And yeah, we have it tuned down to E1, bass 6E. Is it awesome? No, it's not awesome, but proves the point that you can take a Les Paul with 10 to 54 strings, or 10 to 56, 10 to 50, yeah, 10 to 56, or 10 to 54. 10 to 54, I don't know. It doesn't even matter. You can tune it down. It can do the low note. It's got a Reaper here. And let's try recording a little bit. Great. We need some bass. All right. So can you use a regular short scale guitar to go super low? Of course you can. Something to think about is that the benefit of baritone guitars is not the low notes. You can achieve the lowest note on any guitar. You know, Les Paul, anything. Long scale guitars, they give us low notes with the benefit being that everything else on the guitar remains awesome. Of course, we have a ton of folks right now who are pushing baritone guitars so far that they are no longer awesome. They are no longer providing the benefit. So the snake eats its tail. You know, we end up at the very beginning of the problem in the first place. Reason number 2 that you don't need a baritone might be you don't play any sustained fretted notes, especially on the lower string. If you play that sort of staccato kind of music that is really popular in metal right now, the string's so floppy that it's really hard to pick it. Reason number 3 that you do not need a baritone is you love the floppy strings. You love the super light strings. You know, legend has it that Tony Iommi, Tony Iommi tuned down specifically to reduce the tension of the strings because, you know, his fingers. If you don't know about the story, look up Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath, for those of you who don't know. Tony was looking for reduced tension, and the byproduct of it was a lower, darker tone. And it was a benefit, but it wasn't the reason. But if you use a short scale and light strings and low tuning, it'll provide all the sort of sloppy gooiness that you like. And yeah, it's a tone, it's a sound. Reason number 4 that you don't need a baritone. You play music by yourself in the air. You just play riffs in the air. If you just play by yourself in the air, in your room, and you just play chugga chugga riffs, you don't need a baritone. You don't need anything too specific. It's only when you really get producing and playing in a band with other people and things like tuning and overall tone and all that kind of stuff, when those things start to matter, that's when you need the baritone. If you need the baritone, if you're doing something that needs a baritone. Reason number 5, we already kind of covered this in reason number 4, but if you do record and you just do everything by yourself and you've never done anything with anybody else, with any other guitars, and in a scenario like that where you're using the exact same guitar for everything, let's say hypothetically you're using the guitar also for the bass, you're pitching the guitar down an octave to fulfill the bass stuff, which is very common. A ton of people do this. It's gonna be tougher to hear where it's really problematic, and the reason that it's tougher to hear is because everything is equally out of tune. Reason number 6 that you don't need a baritone is maybe you can't hear tuning. I have 2 real-life acquaintances who are both guitar players, and they're completely tone deaf. One of those people is aware of their tuning sensitivity, and the other person is in denial that they can't hear tuning. The amazing thing in having played in bands with both of them is that the tuning can be so incredibly out, like unbelievably out, and they just won't notice. And it's a remarkable thing. Like I'm talking a whole tone or maybe a tone and a half out. I really wish I could just use any guitar. That would be so fantastic because I would be able to get guitars that I like everything about them. A lot of the guitars I have, I don't like everything about them. I always have to settle on something. That loops us around to the Bun proverb. The best guitar for you right now is the guitar you have. If you're watching this channel and you suddenly have gas and you're like, oh, I didn't know that this is a huge problem for me and now I need to go rush out and buy new guitars. That's not what this channel is about. We are not about consumerism. We're about solving problems. So if you don't have a problem, don't go buying a bunch of guitars. Thanks again to everybody with me over at Patreon and YouTube memberships. They are the people who produced this episode and many others. Huge thanks to them. If you'd like to get involved in other ways, you can do it through music, merch, and creative assets. The baritone thing, I'm not excited about it. Everyone thinks I'm the baritone guy. I'm a huge advocate for the problems that baritone guitars solve, for people who are interested in solving those problems. And that's kind of what today is all about. I'd love to know if you've got unnecessary gas for a baritone. If you're on the fence and you're like, oh, I think I need one because there's hype on this thing. Maybe you don't. good chance you don't. If I had to say who baritones are for, they're for people who already know the problem that they have. For me, I understood the problem that I had. I finally came to the conclusion of what the solve was for it. I understood what was going on and I needed to solve it, and I did. If you're in that situation, then this baritone thing is for you. If you're not in that situation, if it's just like a bunch of mumbo jumbo in your head, it's not for you. That's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one.